other big news on Capitol Hill, aside from the ouster of Paul Ryan, aside from the continuing investigation into the personal lawyer of the President of the United States, as if you didn't have enough news, Mark Zuckerberg was on the Hill yesterday. So Mark Zuckerberg had been called onto the Hill yesterday because of all of the claims that privacy had been violated by Facebook. That if you publicly post information and then that information was scraped by an outside company, meaning that they were using that data in order to market to you or in order to generate voter profiles, for example, by Cambridge Analytica, that this was some sort of terrible, evil crime. Now, I think there are lots of problems with social media. I really do. I've been highly critical of social media many times, and I will be again in just a moment. But if you really think that the big problem on Facebook is that you publicly post information and then companies look at it, you're stupid. Okay, you're dumb. And if you think the big problem on Facebook is that tons of people were being manipulated by fake news, right? If you really think, like Democrats think, that Hillary Clinton would have won except for the 7 ads run by Russian bots in the 2016 election, you crazy. Okay? You're out of your mind. And people are so crazy now that there was a big story that came out, I think it was from NBC News yesterday, about a video that was viewed about 250,000 times that was a supposed sex tape, including Hillary Clinton. Okay, it was fake news, obviously, because number one, who would ever want to see any of that on camera? But number two, is that really, was that shifting votes? Because we're 5 minutes away from Dianne Feinstein calling the head of Pornhub up to the Hill to explain why Hillary Clinton lost since there was a distribution on Pornhub of a fake Hillary Clinton sex tape. Okay, all of this is nonsense. The real problems with social media is that social media are now playing a gatekeeper function they were not meant to play. Social media were supposed to be like your phone line. They were supposed to be a platform. Okay, here's the way that this works. When you pick up the phone and you call somebody, what is said over that phone line is not the responsibility of Verizon or AT&T or Sprint, okay? It is the responsibility of the person on the phone. Facebook was supposed to be more like the phone line. It was just a platform. You put your information up there. You put your news stories up there. People can engage. They cannot engage. It's their free choice. Instead, Facebook has now interposed itself between its own users and information that people want to see. It's been a pet peeve of mine for a long time. They were doing it back in 2016 when they were talking about shifting their algorithm so that certain trending topics were not allowed to trend. Conservative trending topics were not allowed to trend on Facebook. And now, of course, they've shifted their algorithms to supposedly benefit local news and established mainstream media outlets and against alternative news sources like Daily Wire. Right? This is why, if you're watching this show right now and you're wondering where your Daily Wire updates went, you need to go and check out your own settings right now and reset your settings because Facebook has tacitly and without your permission gone and changed the algorithm so that you are not seeing our updates anymore because they say that our news site is somehow not as credible as CNN or the New York Times, which is just absurd. Okay, Facebook right now is even burying which outlets it's punishing. Right, so Facebook is obviously penalizing certain outlets, but it's not explaining what exactly it's penalizing. According to the tech website The Outline, conservative and right-wing publishers were hit hardest by the new algorithm change. The engagement numbers of most predominantly liberal publishers remained unaffected. And now Peter Hasson of the Daily Caller is reporting that Facebook does not intend to identify which media outlets it helps and which it hurts, according to a company spokesperson who spoke to the Daily Caller News Foundation. The spokesperson argued that if the company revealed that data, it would not give people a clear picture of Facebook, adding, "We've made changes to newsfeed to help people meaningfully connect with friends and family first. This means public pages of all types are going to experience declines across Facebook. Political pages and partisan news pages, like other public pages, have experienced declines, but there are examples of declines across the political spectrum." Except for the fact that that's not true. Okay, except for the fact that if you look at the mainstream media outlets, they have not lost engagement, right? The only sites that are losing engagement are particularly conservative ones. So all of the senators yesterday were grilling Mark Zuckerberg on the Hill. They're grilling him again today. And first of all, it is important to note, if you're going to have people grill Mark Zuckerberg, they have to have once used a computer. Okay? A lot of these questions look like they were submitted by my 93-year-old grandmother. And it was a bunch of people who are asking Mark Zuckerberg about the questions. Basically, the exchange sounded something like this: Senator Orrin Hatch, who's 8,000 years old, either reading off a piece of paper written by a 23-year-old, or asking questions that have nothing to do with Facebook, or Senator Dick Durbin, who's a complete idiot who probably has never used Facebook, sitting there and saying, "So, Mark Zuckerberg, you have a book full of faces," and then Mark Zuckerberg looking at him in wonderment and bemusement. This is what happens when the average age of the senators who are questioning Mark Zuckerberg is 57 years old. That's not a rip on people who are 57. It is to say that the chances that they are really fluent in social media is pretty low. And that's why you see stupidities like Dick Durbin asking Mark Zuckerberg where he stayed at his hotel last night. This is a thing that actually happened.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, would you be comfortable sharing with us the name of the hotel you stayed in last night?
No.
Okay, and this is one of the things that's so incredibly stupid. So one of the complaints by Democrats has been that if you publicly post information, then people see that information, it's a violation of privacy. Mark Zuckerberg would not have to, under Facebook's rule, reveal where he went to his hotel last night. And so I'm not sure what Dick Durbin is even getting at, but Dick Durbin doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. There were a couple of people who actually went after Zuckerberg on matters that actually do matter. Okay, so there are really a couple of matters that are really serious. One is the amount of political bias at Facebook, the political bias of the people who are actually implementing and writing the algorithms. And the other thing that's really important is whether Facebook is a platform or whether Facebook is a publisher. And that matters because, getting back to our AT&T, Sprint, Verizon discussion, if the phone company starts acting like a censor, if they start buzzing out what you're saying to your friends, they become responsible for what you say to your friends. They're acting like a publisher. Like we at Daily Wire, we edit all of our pieces. We purchase all of our photos from a service called Getty Images so that they're all licensed because we're a publisher and we're responsible for the content we post. If, however, if we use a particular internet service, that internet service is not responsible for the content we post. It's just a platform. Facebook has presented itself as a platform, which means they're not legally responsible for example, misuse of copyrighted content or slander. But if they're responsible for what's being put up, if they're controlling what you see and what you hear, then suddenly they need to be treated like any other news outlet. They need to be treated like NBC or MSNBC or CBS or CNN or the New York Times or the Daily Wire. Right? So those were two separate questions. One was the political bias, and one was the fact that Facebook is playing censor, which would actually subject them to liability. Both of these lines of questioning were engaged in by Republicans, and these were the only two lines of questioning that mattered. So the first line of questioning about the political bias, about Facebook cracking down on conservatives, this was pushed by Senator Ted Cruz from Texas. Full disclosure, when Senator Cruz visited our offices and I interviewed him, we had a pretty substantial discussion about exactly this topic. So good for Senator Cruz for going after Mark Zuckerberg on this. Here's Senator Cruz illuminating the issue for Zuckerberg.
Well, Mr. Zuckerberg, I will say there are a great many Americans who I think are deeply concerned that Facebook and other tech companies are engaged in a pervasive pattern of bias and political censorship. There have been numerous instances with Facebook. In May of 2016, Gizmodo reported that Facebook had purposely and routinely suppressed conservative stories from trending news, including stories about CPAC, including stories about Mitt Romney, including stories about the Lois Lerner IRS scandal, including stories about Glenn Beck. In addition to that, Facebook has initially shut down the Chick-fil-A Appreciation Day page, has blocked a post of a Fox News reporter, has blocked over 24 Catholic pages, and most recently blocked Trump supporters Diamond and Silk's page with 1.2 million Facebook followers after determining their content and brand were, quote, unsafe to the community. To a great many Americans, that appears to be a pervasive pattern of political bias. Do you agree with that assessment?
Zuckerberg would go on to basically say that it is fair to say that Silicon Valley is far left-leaning and that suspicions of political bias are not unwarranted. So he basically admitted that. So that's important. Also, it is important to note, along the same lines, that Zuckerberg, who is now proclaiming that Facebook ought to be the arbiter of what constitutes good speech and bad speech, can't define what good speech and bad speech are. So he was questioned by Ben Sasse about specifically this, and he was asked about defining hate speech because he said, well, let's just get rid of all hate speech. Let's get rid of all the bad speech. And Sasse said, okay, well, it's one thing if you're talking about violent speech, but if you're talking about nonviolent speech, do you even know how to define that? And if you claim that you're a platform, if you claim that you're not a publisher, you're a platform, then how can you define what speech is hateful and which speech is not, given the fact that you have no hard considerations as to
Well, Ann Coulter, of course, the brilliant columnist, best-selling author. You got her book, In Trump We Trust, and get her book, Adios America. And, of course, you go to AnnCoulter.com. Make sure you follow her on Twitter. Ann Coulter, how you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you, Mark Simone?
Very good. I'm just reading this tweet that just came out by President Trump. Speaker Paul Ryan is a truly good man. A legacy of achievement that nobody can question.
You're not trying to perk me up this morning.
Well, that's what you do when somebody. That's a way of saying, get the hell out. Goodbye.
Okay, at least Ryan is leaving.
Yeah, but the bad news is he wants to finish his term, so he's not going till January.
Right.
So
always a catch.
Yeah. So the swamp snakes are leaving.
Let's hope he really does. I mean, put a pin in this. He claims it so he can go back to Janesville and spend more time with his kids. Let's
please. You ever seen his kids? He'll be spending more time on K Street. And
well, that was my suspicion, which you leapt right to. Apparently, he married a wealthy woman, so maybe he will spend time with his kids, but that is not the usual path for retiring members of Congress. Thus, the bills they write that are so solicitous of corporate America and so ignoring of regular Americans.
Yeah. Did you watch any of the Zuckerberg testimony?
I'm so glad you mentioned this. I've been dying to make this point actually for years. When Republicans have control of Congress, which may only last for another few months now, unfortunately. I mean, this is a huge problem. I just participated in this Breitbart town hall on big tech, and you and I have talked about it, what Twitter and Facebook are doing to conservatives. So many conservatives with no hate speech, just speech that social justice warriors don't like, are being censored and shadow banned. I recommend looking at Ted Cruz's very brief. I tweeted the video, 5 minutes. You should play it on radio.
Oh, we have it up it's on the webpage. We have it up there today.
Okay, but you should also just play it for people in cars. That was really good. It's 5 minutes. Anyway, that's the real issue here. This Cambridge Analytica thing is ridiculous, but so what? If it gets liberals upset about Facebook, then fine. But so you're looking at, or normal people are looking at things like First Amendment. Is Facebook a telephone? And we're not controlling the content, or is Mark Zuckerberg Pinch Sulzberger, the editor, who's going to decide what you can and can't see on Twitter? And same thing with Jack Dorsey on Twitter. Should it be regulated as a utility? Maybe we were wrong about the Net Neutrality Act. I mean, it's bad to have the government regulate speech, but I think I'd prefer the government to these guys, the social justice warriors in Silicon Valley. Anyway, my solution, sort of a short-term thing, but it would be a lot of fun and also freedom promoting, is whenever companies behave this way, as Facebook and Twitter and Google are, Congress should just demand that all of the CEOs come constantly for these hearings. They can subpoena them. They have that power. Just make Zuckerberg and Dorsey and I don't know if Eric Schmidt still has anything to do with Google. Just have them come and be questioned by moron senators day after day after day. After, a few months of this, they'll go back to Silicon Valley and say, that's it, no more censoring.
Well,
I'm not going to be interviewed by these morons one more day.
I agree with you, but you're also forgetting they may just go hire hundreds of millions of dollars worth of lobbying firms and make this stop.
Well, that's the thing about Congress. I suppose if they're just bought, we may as well, if they are completely bought, we may as well give up now. But it would be a lot of fun. It would get representatives and senators on TV, and the questions could get better and better. But the main point is just annoy the CEOs.
Yeah, I think the only reason they're talking about regulation is they know it'll get those lobbying dollars flowing into Washington. But you're right. And the difference is, you mentioned Sulzberger of the New York Times. He's got dozens of competitors. And when he was asked in the hearing, Zuckerberg could not name a competitor. There's nobody competing with Facebook on that scale.
No, nor Google, which is really the most frightening. This Professor Epstein, who was on the panel, he's run all these studies, and it's really pretty shocking the power that Google and Facebook have. For example, he was describing, I guess if you searched on Yahoo, and I forget what the other search was, you'd put in something like, and he's done a study, I guess this is written up, you'd put in Hillary is, and on Yahoo, it would be things like, sick, dying of cancer, a liar, because those were the things people were searching for. That's what you think Google is doing when it fills in the rest of your sentence. Yeah. He said, we went to Google, and he has, a team of researchers doing this and taking screenshots of this. He went over to Google, and all it would fill in after Hillary is were things like, awesome, our next president can't. And And he said, I mean, I thought, come on, how much does this influence people? Well, he's done studies on that too, and apparently different people are suggestible. Probably your audience, you and me, we're not going to be suggestible at all. The group that was the most suggestible, hilariously enough, are moderate Republicans, but obviously a lot of independents, they want to go there. It's peer pressure. They want to go with the crowd. Oh, everybody must think Hillary's awesome. And the reason they didn't, he said they know they have this power. If they wanted to flip an election, they could change. I think he said about 500,000 votes just by sending out a little notice reminding certain independent voters to vote on Election Day. And he said, you know, the reason they didn't bother in 2016 and we ended up with Trump was everybody thought Hillary had it.
Yeah.
Why bother?
Hey, Comey, James Comey's got his book coming out. He's doing a bunch of interviews. First one is Sunday night, George Stephanopoulos. He's going to call Trump a mob boss. What do you think will happen with this book?
Oh, I think it's going to be very well received on MSNBC. Well, I think that's what Mueller is going for. If I may leap ahead to the raid on Michael Cohen's office, as you probably have gleaned from my Twitter feed, I think what this really shows is Mueller is dying for Trump to fire him. Why? Because he has nothing on Russia. He has nothing, and he can't go back and tell Rachel Maddow, I'm sorry, there was no Russian collusion. His name will be mud. He's dying to be fired so he can become a martyr and a hero, and he can write his own book. And why should Jim Comey have all the fun? And he can be on the cover of his book, staring off into the distance, looking honorable and brave. Please fire me, President.
You're right.
Please.
Well, I think you're right. You know, Comey used to be Mueller's number 2. That was Mueller's protege. He's probably saying to himself, why should this guy make millions? I should be making millions.
Having fun and being touted as just Mr. Honorable. And as long as the investigation is continuing, every night we get like 1 hour on MSNBC about how honorable and brave Robert Mueller is. But the fact that he's staging a raid over the Stormy Daniels payment, I think he's running out of Russia leads. and I mean, I think what obviously happened there, and everyone sees that it's happened, though Trump and particularly Michael Cohen don't want to state the obvious, is that, you know, this was 10 days before the election. The Access Hollywood tape had just come out. Some porn star steps forward and claims that she's going to say she had an affair with Trump. Whether or not it's true, of course Michael Cohen paid her a paltry amount of money compared to how much campaign spending there was out there, so that it wouldn't come out 10 days before the election in the middle of the Access Hollywood business. I mean, I have no insider information. It seems perfectly obvious that's what happened. So what they want to say is, yes, but you did not record that as a campaign finance expenditure. Well, okay.
Well,
okay,
that's just an FEC fine. But you're right. I think Mueller wants to get fired and make some money here.
Yes. Yes, and Trump should not, and that's why they did the raid, because that does seem extremely outrageous and violative, or not violative, but damaging to the attorney-client privilege. I mean, it can be done in ways that it isn't if they think it's evidence of a crime. But still, it is so aggressive. He's trying to shake Trump, to upset him, force Trump in a moment of peak to fire him, and then he can be a hero and he'll never have to say how pathetic his investigation is.
I agree. Well, everybody follow Ann Coulter on Twitter. In fact, go there right now. You can read all of this. And tonight, your new column comes out?
Yes, it does.
And you go to AnnCoulter.com and make sure you get her book, In Trump We Trust, and all her other books, AnnCoulter.com, and follow her on Twitter and Facebook. And Ann Coulter, thanks for being with us.
Good to talk to you, Mark Simone. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg spent hours on Capitol Hill today taking questions from senators about Facebook's role in the 2016 election and in American society more generally. We'll talk to one of the senators who was there and spoke to Zuckerberg, and more broadly, what it meant. But first, Brett Larson, an anchor at Fox News Headlines 24/7, who covers tech for our show, has the big moments from today. Brett?
It was quite the day, Tucker. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg checked in with Congress today for day one of hearings, and we learned a little bit about the inner workings of the social media giant. One thing we heard repeatedly was exactly what Facebook is and is not.
What you think of as the Facebook service, right? That's everyone has control every single time that they go to share that. They can delete that data anytime they want. Full control, the majority of the data.
Yeah, but sharing everything, not so much.
Mr. Zuckerberg, would you be comfortable sharing with us the name of the hotel you stayed in last night?
No.
I think that might be what this is all about. Your right to privacy, the limits of your right to privacy, and how much you give away.
Yeah, but with 2.2 billion users and in the wake of concerns about more than 80 million users having their data stolen by political consulting firm Cambridge Analytica, is Facebook your only choice?
If I buy a Ford and it doesn't work well and I don't like it, I can buy a Chevy. If I'm upset with Facebook, what's the equivalent product that I can go sign up for?
Well, there's the second category that I was going to talk about.
I'm not talking about categories. I'm talking about, is there real competition you face? You don't think you have a monopoly?
It certainly doesn't feel like that to me.
Okay.
Well, there is also concerns, Tucker, about First Amendment rights and just what control the social media giant has over what you see, say, and share.
You say that you have 15 to 20,000 people working on security and content review. Do you know the political orientation of those 15 to 20,000 people engaged in content review?
No, Senator. We do not generally ask people about their political orientation when they're joining the company.
Senator Ben Sasse asked a similar question about censorship on the site, and CEO Mark Zuckerberg said the speech they censor is anytime someone pushes to hurt others. Senator Sasse was also concerned about addiction to the social media site.
As a dad, do you worry about social media addiction as a problem for America's teens?
Well, my hope is that we can be idealistic but have a broad view of our responsibility.
And Tucker, we will get more from Zuckerberg tomorrow when he sits down for day two. He has certainly been very frank in his responses and a little obtuse about specifics, which made the lack of understanding of exactly how Facebook works and our understanding of it very clear.
Thanks for that, Brett. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana was one of the many senators who spoke to Zuckerberg today. Here's part of it.
Here's what everybody's been trying to tell you today, and I say this gently. Your user agreement sucks. I'm going to suggest to you that you go back home and rewrite it. And tell your $1,200 an hour lawyers, no disrespect, they're good. But tell them you want it written in English.
Senator Kennedy joins us tonight. Senator, thanks for coming on.
You bet.
What was the point of this hearing? What laws are you all considering to constrain Facebook?
You know, Tucker, I was mildly disappointed with the hearing. I mean, I wanted the point to be, I wanted Mr. Zuckerberg to step up to the plate and say, look, 3 words, I'm on it. I get it. It can be fixed. I'm going to fix it, and we'll do it together. That's not what I heard. I just didn't feel like we connected with Mr. Zuckerberg today. I mean, look, Facebook is an extraordinary company. It's done magical things, but it's clear that the digital promised land has some minefields in it. One's the privacy issue. The other is the propaganda. And I don't want to have to vote to regulate Facebook, but by God, I will, unless they're willing to step up to the plate and address those 2 issues. I think they can. I hope they can. If they can't, we've got a bigger problem than just what we talked about today.
So here you've got the biggest provider of news in the United States with far more power than William Randolph Hearst ever had, with a long and proven track record of censorship in this country and other countries, with the power to change election results. You don't think that's enough of a threat right there to act?
Well, I think that's a very important issue. Senator Cruz, Senator Sasse made that point. I ran out of time. I wanted to make that point. I mean, everybody says, and I think it's true, poison is being spread on social media. Okay, what's poison? to find poison. And look, I wanted a lot of our Democratic friends have made a big deal about, well, Cambridge Analytica, and they worked with President Trump. I wanted to ask Mr. Zuckerberg today about this statement that was made by somebody, Ms. Carol Davidson from President Obama's re-election campaign in 2012. This is what she said. She ran media analytics for the president. She said, Facebook was very candid that they allowed us to do things they wouldn't have allowed someone else to do because they were on our side.
Right.
I wanted to ask if that's an accurate statement, but I ran out of time.
So you don't think, I mean, finally, the Congress would have really uniquely the ability to get this under control. If you think that too much power is vested in one company and they're, in effect, enemies of the First Amendment, I know Republicans don't like to regulate things, but do you think we're approaching a point where, for the good of the public, that may need to be done?
I don't think we're there yet, but I think a lot of it depends on how Mr. Zuckerberg reacts to this. I'll say it again, there are two issues. One's a privacy problem, the other is a propaganda problem. And the issue there is, how do we solve it without impinging on people's First Amendment rights? Now, that's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
And I want to be assured, didn't get it today, maybe we'll get it in the second round, that Facebook is not politically biased one way or the other. I don't want them pitching for the Republicans. I don't want them pitching for the Democrats either, though.
Yeah, well, they are. Senator, thank you. Great to see you.
You bet.